Good evening, colleagues. Let's call our regular business meeting to order, and I'll ask the treasurer to call the roll. Present.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Vice President Collins? Ms. Gibbs? Ms. Hudson? Mr. Peretti? And Ms. Reyes? You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Colleagues, I'd like to remind you to put your cell phones, turn them off or put them in airplane mode. That will limit feedbacks on the microphones. I'd also like to recognize that Board Member Reyes will be celebrating her 29th birthday tomorrow. Again, and I'd like to ask Board Member Reyes to stand and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please be upstanding.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes. All right, what I'd like to do is just briefly read through our agenda so we all know the work we have before us this evening. We do have at least one individual here to speak to us and provide public comment. We'll take that right after we adopt the agenda. We will then hear from our interim superintendent, Dr. Stanford, and we're looking forward to a special presentation on early childhood. After that, we'll hear from our treasurer and internal auditor. We will then take up our consent agenda, after which we will hear from my colleagues on any announcements or points of pride they'd like to share. So having said that, is there a motion that we adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown? Yes. Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti? Yes. Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
That motion carried.
And now that we've adopted the agenda, I'd like to ask you all, colleagues, to allow me to deviate from it. I don't want to forget, if there's no objection, we have a special recognition for the Columbus Urban League here today. And we do have from the Columbus Urban League their Vice President, Mr. Art Hurst. I'd like to ask you to join us at the podium, Vice President Hurst, if you don't mind coming on up. And I'll read the resolution. For those of you who don't know, the National Urban League Conference was just in town, and that's a pretty big deal. And hopefully you all had a chance to participate in some of the events. It was an amazing conference, very special time. So, honoring the Columbus Urban League for 100 years of service to the community. Whereas, founded in 1918, the Columbus Urban League is a community-based nonprofit advocacy organization, and their mission is to empower African Americans and disenfranchised groups through economic, educational, and social progress. And whereas the Columbus Urban League stands as one of the largest and most prestigious community-based organizations in Central Ohio, ranking in the top 5 of the 88 affiliate network of the Urban League movement nationally. And whereas the Columbus Urban League is one of the oldest organizations in the United States promoting equal and equitable access to resources. And whereas the Columbus Urban League leads and supports a number of initiatives that benefit the students and families of Columbus City Schools, including Fresh After School, Head Start Academy, I Am My Brother's Keeper, Neighborhood Violence Intervention, and Real Potential Youth Empowerment. And whereas from August 1st to August 4th, 2018, the Columbus Urban League served as host to the 2018 National Urban League Conference, known as the largest annual civil rights conference in the nation in the capital city of Columbus, Ohio. Now, therefore it be resolved that the Columbus Board of Education does hereby honor and recognize the Columbus Urban League for 100 years of commitment to creating opportunities for disadvantaged urban families they serve every year. Presented this day, August 7th, 2018. Vice President Hurst, I would like to offer you the opportunity to provide any brief comments you might like to share with the board and those assembled here this evening.
First, thank you for the honor. On behalf of President Hightower, and our board of directors and that chair, Ramon Gregory. It's a great honor to be here. It's, with everyone that was in town last week and with everything that was going on, we were moving fast. And to be able to slow it all down and be recognized by your home city, your home entities, your home partners, it's ideal. I was thinking about some of our partnerships back there and with the after-school programs with MVIP, with I Am My Brother's Keeper, but, none was bigger than this weekend when, y'all had a group of volunteers that mobilized. On top of the fact that before that, with the newsletter and with the robocalls, you had people on site as far as parents and children. And because of that, we were able to hand out almost 8,000 book bags, with the majority of those being Columbus City School students. So thank you for the opportunity to partner. We're using this 100-year anniversary as a springboard into our next 100 years, and we appreciate the partnership. We want to be able to move forward and represent the city in the most positive way possible, and partnerships with Columbus City Schools absolutely leads to that end. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Vice President Hurst. I did have the opportunity to speak with President and CEO Hightower, and she offers her regrets that she couldn't be here, but she sent you to serve in her stead, and she is very grateful for the recognition as well. So I'd like to congratulate you again. And if you don't mind, we'd like to ask you to come up, receive the resolution, and we'll take a photograph.
All right.
Come right on up. It's in consent. Of course. Would any of my colleagues like to share any comments on the 100th anniversary of the Columbus Urban League? Ma'am, Ms. Gibbs.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all of your work and service. I'd be remiss if I did not acknowledge all of the work of the Columbus Urban League, from not only what you provide to the community, but for the fact that I started in the Urban League age 15, cutting grass in the Operation Brightside Team program, the 2 summers of the drought, in steel-toe boots, and a jerry curl. So, but since 1918, and under the leadership of Nimrod B. Allen, the Urban League has begun an incredible work, and 100 years just isn't enough for what our community will need. And I appreciate all that you provide, and we did it in a very short capsule, but if you look back over even the last 50 years of the Urban League, all of the homes moving from Brighton Road over to 788 Mount Vernon Avenue, and the countless number of lives that you touch, from seniors to early childhood to the new empowerment center that is right across the street. It is clearly a remarkable treasure. We also are very proud of our very own Stephanie Hightower, who served on this board as president of the Columbus City Schools, and who keeps in her heart the children of Columbus, and all of them from Columbus. So I want to thank you for all that you've done, all of the leadership of the Urban League, from Samuel Gresham Jr. to Bobby Brown to everyone you'll see on that historical wall when you walk into the lobby. I just think it's tremendous. The conference was incredible. They brought just world-class leaders, from Benjamin Crump to President Mark Morial and everyone in between. The founder of the Me Too movement was here. I mean, they had some incredible learning opportunities that you could take advantage of. So thank you for all that you do and all the work that will continue to come.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Any of my other colleagues have any comments they'd like to share? All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to recognize you this evening. We look forward to the next 100 years with you. All right. Yes. All right, very well then. Let's move on then to public comment. We do have one individual who has signed up to provide public comment this evening. His name is Mark Winkle. Mr. Winkle, please approach the podium. The topic of his presentation relates to hiring practices of Columbus City Schools. Board action requested amend hiring practices to comply with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Mr. Winkle, you will have 4 minutes to speak to the board. You will see a timer, and we would ask that you conclude at the end of the 4 minutes. Good evening. The floor is yours.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Beherick, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. Here in Ohio, our universities graduate more teachers than any other state. However, there's a dark secret that needs to be discussed about that very fact. On the Association of American Educators website, they state, teacher gender gap is still alive and well. Male educators constitute 2% of pre-K and kindergarten teachers, 18% of the elementary and middle school teachers, and only 42% of the high school teaching level staff. Those numbers are down from 2007. That article was published in 2012. So the question is, why are male teachers still few and far between in the United States? According to expert analysis, most readily apparent answer is that sexism keeps men from entering the teaching field. That sexism includes employment discrimination by both male and female interviewers, human resources staff, and administrators. In the state of Ohio, the average school earns a grade of C+ in comparison with our neighboring states. Columbus City Schools has earned the dubious honor of earning D's and F's in every graduation, in every category, including low graduation rate and a high dropout rate. In the United Kingdom, a journalist found connection between low graduation rates by male students and the lack of male teachers. She quoted, "Boys make less effort and are marked more strictly when they have a female teacher." I myself have seen this very thing happen every school that I've taught in. So you have a twofold problem with the solution that your school district refuses to employ, namely hiring more male teachers. I myself have tried unsuccessfully hired by Columbus City Schools since 2014. At every turn I've been interfered with by human resources staff, administrators, and other policymakers that do not want to hire male teachers. This year, I began my attempt in April, and the ESL coordinator actually called me at home to try to recruit me. However, I've only been given one interview, and that interview was a set up for a failure. That ESL coordinator had already consecrated my failure before the interview had begun, has refused to answer my emails or phone calls since then. I'm a highly qualified English K-12 and ESL teacher. I've taught students from 50 countries. But due to your district's discriminatory hiring practices, which violate the 14th Amendment, U.S. Constitution, and Title VII, I cannot get a job in your school district. It is my intention to sue Columbus City Schools for these violations. I wish it were not so. I wish there was a way we could resolve our differences and I could teach. My school of preference was Columbus Global Academy, where I first learned to love teaching ESL students. There were 6 positions open in April. However, I was not even interviewed. The only way you're going to resolve the disciplinary problems, the low attendance rates, the high dropout rates, especially those of male teachers, male students, the low graduation rates, is to comply with the laws and hire more male teachers. Around the country, the problem that needs to be corrected is the decline of the nation's schools. And to correct that, you need to comply with the Civil Rights Act and increase the morale of the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winkle. Are there any clarifying questions from my colleagues at this time? Hearing none, we do thank you for taking the opportunity to address this evening. Have a good night. All right. Let's move on to our superintendent report. Dr. Stanford, I'll call on you at this time. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Board of Education. Well, with just 16 days to go, the buzz is here. It is time for back-to-school preparations. The energy is in full gear, and the spirit of success is ramping up for another year of meeting our students where they are and lifting them up to higher levels of success. Just over the last week, we have welcomed back district team members at the new administrators orientation, the new teachers orientation, the Administrators Academy for building principals and school leadership teams, and last but not least, the Secretaries Academy through the Department of Accountability and other support services. At the same time, our business and operations teams, especially our buildings and grounds team, are getting more than 3,000 classrooms ready for August 20th and August 23rd. Yes, I said August 20th. If you're wondering, August 20th is the first day our teachers return back to the classroom. And of course, August the 23rd is the first day for our students. Our central enrollment team just celebrated the remodeling and reopening of our fabulous one-stop center for families to enroll their children. We are on track to process about 12,000 enrollments in the month of August and September. Yes, I said about 12,000 in just 2 months' time. Over the weekend, we started the final push of our historic partnership with NBC4's Stuff the Backpack. Thousands of backpacks donated this past weekend at NBC4 will go to our students. Thousands more through commitments by local businesses, churches, and partner nonprofit organizations. Tomorrow is a donation day at the Columbus Zoo. $4 from each family admission will be donated to the Backpack Initiative. And if you're wondering, I will be there tomorrow evening after work if you want to join me. NBC4 and our communications team launched the Stuff Just One initiative as a part of this campaign to convince more donors and more businesses to give enough supplies to stuff one backpack or to donate enough supplies to take care of one classroom or to donate to maybe even take care of one entire school. Next week, volunteers will converge on the gym at our Linmore Education Center to stuff each of those backpacks with all the supplies donated over the last several months. NBC4 and our team are working very hard to reach our goal of providing a backpack to every student in the district on the first day of school. Our work is not done, but we are not giving up, and we are going to push hard to reach this finish line with this goal. District representatives will carry the spirit of success into the community again this weekend. At the African American Wellness Walk, look for our booth next to the NBC4 booth. We will hand out books for young readers, sign up mentors, offer information about our wellness program, recruit potential new employees, and support our South High School band and drill team. At the Latino Festival, our community's 2-day event downtown at Bicentennial Park, we will have team members from Columbus Spanish Immersion Academy there to hand out translated books for young readers. Some of them will be in Spanish only, and others will be in English to encourage dual language reading and learning. Team members from our HR team will also be on hand at the Latino Festival to recruit new talent to join our great family. Last but not least this weekend, we will be at the Celebrity All-Star Basketball Game, hosted by the Office of Student Mentoring to recruit new mentors for the upcoming school year. The game will feature local legends and professional basketball players, stars like Jared Sullinger, George Reese, and Tamika Brown Whitehead. The game starts at 3 p.m., again, this Saturday at the historic East High School, 1500 East Broad Street. We want people to step up their game and join us on Saturday at the Celebrity All-Star Basketball Game. and sign up to be a mentor with one of our students this year. You can sign up to be a mentor at www.ccsoh.us/M lowercase entorship.aspx. Again, just go onto our website, and it's one of the banners. You can just click that banner, and it'll take you right to the mentoring page, especially if you cannot be at the game this weekend. Our theme for this new school year is Ready for Success. It is a spotlight on all that we do to prepare and empower our students and their families to be ready for this journey to create their own success this fall and winter. Ready for Success sends a message of outreach leading up to the first day of school, including social media, direct mail to our families, and also the events that we have attended over the last few weeks. Key talking points in our Stuff the Backpack effort will be provided. Principals are planning for Ready for Success activities and events on the first day of school, including Ready for Success rallies at each of our buildings. And our communications team has prepared Ready for Success materials to hand out to our students, including a special window cling that families can proudly display in their cars. Last but not least, we are creating an opportunity for our students to sign a Ready for Success student pledge. This pledge will highlight some of the things that we think that are important for student success, such as attend every day ready to learn. Every hour counts, so we need them to be in class and to be engaged and to be in tune to the lesson plans for that day. Stay safe and healthy. Safety begins with each person taking responsibility for the safety of others around them. That's what our Safety Together message is all about, and we will continue that message of Safer Together this fall. Show respect and kindness to others. Relationships. We know that relationships are the foundation for any successful organization, any successful enterprise, and any successful activity that involves people. And so we are asking everyone in our schools to build relationships so that we can have nurturing and supportive cultures and climates in every last one of our schools. Always reach higher. We're telling our students at every grade, and we want them to always reach for that next goal, achieve greater heights, and to excel further in their learning. So, members of the Board of Education, I have been asking all of our team members over the last couple of days this question, and I'm asking you, are you ready for success in Columbus City Schools this year? Yes, sir. All right. Well, come August the 23rd, we will be ready for success to start. So to close out the interim superintendent's report tonight, I want to focus a little bit of time on how we get our youngest students ready for success through our early childhood education program. Here to provide you with an update tonight of our activities within the Division of Early Childhood Education are Ann Lockett, Director of the Division of Early Childhood Education, Rochelle Wilkerson, Supervisor in the Division of Early Childhood Education, Rhonda Childs, Principal Supervisor of the Linden Park Neighborhood Early Childhood Education Center, and Dr. Gina Ginn, Executive Director of the Columbus Early Learning Centers. Dr. Lockett.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Baharek, Internal Auditor Smith, and of course, Superintendent Dr. Stanford. Thank you. We are going to go ahead and move right through our presentation. We're going to start with Rochelle Wilkerson, the Supervisor of Early Childhood Education.
Good evening. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to provide a brief overview of the Division of Early Childhood Education. We currently serve approximately 1,900, we have the capacity to serve approximately 1,900 students with 103 classrooms across 63 buildings. As to date, our enrollment is 1,395 students, and that's with 2 more weeks to enroll, so we're at about 71% capacity right now. Our dedicated team of 301 early childhood education teachers and staff provide 5 distinct service models to our students across the city. We have regular education pre-K classrooms that serve 20 typically developing students. We have an inclusion classroom that serves 8 students with disabilities with 12 typically developing students. We also have a new model which we're implementing for the 18-19 school year to provide services to our more involved students with disabilities, which will have 8 students with disabilities with up to 3 typical peers. We have special education classrooms for students that are our earliest learners, and they are typically newly identified 3-year-old students, and it's half-day programming with the morning and the afternoon. And lastly, we're able to provide high-quality early childhood education, special education services to students across the city with our team of itinerant teachers. These teachers serve students in their homes, daycare centers, and other locations across the city. All of our programs are fully licensed by ODE, and of our 52 out of our 63 buildings are Step Up to Quality rated with 4 or 5 stars, and 90% of our buildings are 5-star rated. We anticipate the remaining 11 classrooms or buildings being rated during the 18-19 school year. At this point, I'd like to introduce Dr. Jean again to provide us a little bit more information about the exciting renovations happening at Linden Park.
Thank you, Rochelle. For the past 2 years, as most of you have known, because you've been to Linden Park and seen how fun and exciting it is there, it's been a fun-filled 2 years of learning for our kids in Linden. And as I'm sure you all recognized when you were there, there was this whole other floor that we weren't using yet, and all of the opportunity that was available in Linden, we had to figure out a way to make that work for us. So in partnership with the district, in consultation with Capital Improvements and our good friend Alex, who always answers my emails, and I'm very appreciative of that, we were able to secure $150,000 in funding through one of CELC's corporate partners, Alliance Data, through the Silicon Valley Family Foundation, to start renovations on the 2nd floor at Linden Park to be able to convert those into usable classrooms. So the funds that we'll be working with in concert with the district will be allowing us to build out the 6 additional classrooms in the school, a teacher workroom, converting 1st floor custodial area to a daily living skills and personal hygiene space for students with significant disabilities. We'll be updating the lighting on the 2nd floor, a restroom conversion, and increasing the height of the railings in the stairwell because of our little people. So the proposed construction start date is this fall, and we are very excited to get started, and hopefully we'll have everything up and running by fall of next year. Now, I would like to introduce Rhonda.
Thank you, Dr. Ginn. So I'm going to provide some information about the Linden Park Neighborhood Early Childhood Education Center, give a brief overview of community partners and future plans. So our enrollment for Linden Park as of today in Infinite Campus is 49 students. That does not include our community partners. Our center serves up to 52 CCS students, and the 2 community partners combined serve 40 students, and we anticipate being full for this coming school year. We have 6 classrooms for our CCS classrooms, 1 Child Development Council classroom, and 1 Columbus Early Learning Center classroom. We have a staff made up of teachers and instructional assistants, as well as related services, including OT and PT. And then our building also houses the parent and community engagement for our department. So we also have community partners that assist in the educational goals for our classrooms, and so we anticipate maintaining and expanding those partnerships, as well as a new partner that we are excited to work with this upcoming is the Linden Park Recreation Center. And so with that, the future plans include potential for additional classrooms to provide high quality early learning opportunities for the Linden community. And I'm going to turn it back over to Ann.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to share the early childhood education program and all of our work on behalf of our students, our staff, our children, especially their families, and of course our community.
Comments from colleagues? Board Member Gibbs.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I think the flowers really complement your dress, and it puts us all in the mind of early childhood. Just a quick question, because I've been to the center, and you do such amazing work. How do you work with the next tier of teachers to help bridge your students from where you have them in your Linden Park program to where they're going in elementary school, and especially those exceptional children in the OT and PT units?
President Baker, to Board Member Gibbs' question. We have multiple methods for supporting our staff and our students at Linden Park. So because we have special ed students, we have staff that are highly trained to work with those students, both with their speech and language, their fine motor, their gross motor skills, especially their social emotional skills, which we know is the primary indicator of success in kindergarten. We have a curriculum designed. It is second step that supports the special education needs social emotionally wise, but in particular, the staff are trained and they use that throughout all of the classrooms. We have transition to kindergarten. We provide a checklist that we administer to all the students who are headed into kindergarten. So we're able to share that information with their families during parent-teacher conferences and at any time when it's needed. And also for teachers traveling who are kindergarten, this information is shared with our kindergarten teachers as our students progress.
Okay. Just another quick question. Do you do joint professional development with the elementary school team, and that's all of special ed? Do all of the teachers do joint development together as a unit, or are they separated? I guess I'm not sure. Because I know, I've been in the building, I know what you do is wonderful. I just want to know how much of it travels up with the student, and are they receiving, and is the professional development and those practices shared across elementary, middle, and high, and the entire journey for that special ed student?
That is a great question. Multifaceted answer, of course. We do some professional development across early childhood and kindergarten, particularly some conversations around data. We do not sit in classrooms together with pre-K and kindergarten staff addressing the same exact components. However, early literacy is a huge target for both pre-K and kindergarten. We did receive the Striving Readers Grant, so we have professional development focused on early literacy starting in pre-K. So we have many elements addressing the transition from pre-K to kindergarten, if that answers your question.
It does a bit. So thank you very much, and I look forward to learning more and watching you grow and the work to be done, with the alignment, especially for our special ed students. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Vice President?
You know what? I think she might have asked my question, because mine was along the same lines of what is the process for identifying students who may need an IEP?
And gifted, actually.
Certainly. So the gifted question, President Baker, to Mr. Cole's question. The gifted question, our students are assessed through the gifted program from pre-K on into K through 12 programming. So it's all supported through the gifted department. The special education department is different. The early childhood program does assess all of the children where there are suspected disabilities. We're required to honor child find. So any family member, any physician, anyone from anywhere in the community can make a referral regarding a child they run through our program. That is what we have moved to central enrollment. So those children move through a screening, they move through assessment, they move through ETR, they move to IEP, and that all happens now, most of the program at central enrollment now. We do have some assessments and screenings that happen out in the community, Nice Longer Center, Childhood League, Franklin County Board of DD, and some other partnerships. But they're all assessed through our program.
Not to belabor, but on the gifted end of things, there are 4 different criteria by which you can be assessed as gifted: high cognitive, musical, artistic, any number of criteria, about 4 of them. How do you identify these things in pre-K students? I have a gifted kid, 2 of them. I know that they were assessed 3rd grade and on, and I thought that that was typically the time in which we do that. But how do you assess that in a pre-K youngster or someone transitioning to kindergarten?
Well, I believe that some of those skills and some of those strengths are supported by the classroom teacher in all of those areas based on our curriculum and the work that we do every day. That information is communicated as those children transition into kindergarten. There isn't really assessment for gifted skill set in pre-kindergarten as there is in K through 12. So that information is shared and certainly fostered every day in our program.
Okay, I thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you. Ms. Gibbs?
One last and maybe the most important question for our viewing and listening audience. If you want to sign your child up for early childhood, if you want your student to get enrolled, what should they do?
Access the Columbus City Schools website and make an appointment. All the information is there, and if there are any questions, certainly please call. We're happy to support anyone in early childhood education.
What number should they call for people who don't have internet access?
Okay, we're going to ask Dr. Klein, who's sitting over my right.
They'll access the Speedy Pass on the Columbus City School website. If they don't have one, we have access from 8 o'clock in the morning until 7:30 in the evening, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and all day Saturday for the next 8 weeks at the Central Enrollment Center. They can please call 614-365-4100.
Thank you. Thank you, President Baker.
Thank you,
And thank you
ma'am.
for your presentation.
Thank you, Director Lockett and team. Thank you, Dr. Klein.
Thank you.
We appreciate it very much. We appreciate the update. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Superintendent?
President Baker, members of the board, that concludes my presentation this evening.
Thank you very much. Let's move on then, colleagues, to hear from our internal auditor. Madam Internal Auditor, the floor is yours.
Hello, members of the board.
Closer.
I heard that. Okay, we're good. I'll start over. President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board. At the June 27th, 2018 Audit and Accountability meeting, the committee voted to recommend acceptance of the Office of Internal Audit's fiscal year 2019 work plan and forward the plan to the board for adoption. A copy of the work plan schedule is part of the consent agenda for a vote later this evening by the board. The committee provided feedback on the work plan throughout the process. The work plan includes 17 audit activities, including follow-up activities on previously issued audits and school audits. The plan also includes hours dedicated for coordination with external auditors, management of the Fraud, Waste, and Abuse Hotline, and consultation and facilitation with management. Upon approval by the board, the work plan will be placed on the district website. As audit reports are released, I will continue to provide the board with a high-level overview of the audit results, and all reports are sent to the board upon a vote released by the Audit and Accountability Committee. The committee also voted on the release of 5 reports. It was kind of a long meeting. 2 reports covered special reviews and investigation activity. One was on the activity of a coach that did not comply with district cash handling procedures, compliance with seeking board approval for out-of-town travel, and following background requirements for a volunteer assistant. The review also noted an amount parents paid for goods and services greater than the amount of goods and services received in the amount of $3,994. A referral has been made to Labor Relations. The second special review and investigation report dealt with a conflict of interest involving a vendor who was also an employee and the questionable judgment and decision-making that led to the conflict. This referral has been made to legal. The other 3 reports are updates on previous engagements. The use of district facilities was originally released in April of 2017. The original report had 18 corrective action plans. We tested 10 of the corrective action plans and noted 5 have been implemented and 5 have not been implemented. Progress is being made, and the end result will be a more streamlined, efficient process for the public that use our facilities and the staff that administer the function. The payroll audit was originally released in January of 2016. The report had 19 corrective action plans. We tested 14 items and noted 6 implemented and 8 not implemented. The Treasurer's Office has undertaken a comprehensive opportunity study of their operations, and the study will address issues noted in the audit. At the conclusion of the opportunity study, my office will perform additional tests on the open items and report the results to the board. The final report release was one on fixed and controllable assets. Actually, this report was originally presented to ANA in January. They had additional follow-up questions, so we addressed all their questions and then brought the report back to the committee in June for a vote, which they did vote to release the report. This report had 6 recommendations. At a future date, a follow-up to the corrective action plans will be performed, and the effectiveness of the steps taken will be reported to the ANA committee and to the board. Mr. President, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Madam Internal Auditor, and thank you for your diligence and hard work, and also offer our gratitude to all members of the committee. And I would like to ask my colleagues if there are any questions for the Internal Auditor. Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it. All right, let's move on then to the Treasurer. Mr. Treasurer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Thank you, President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board. This evening, I have some highlights. Hopefully, they're just highlights of the final report for fiscal year 18, ending June 30, just a little over a month ago. Following the pattern we've seen fairly consistently during the year, revenues have exceeded plan and expenditures have run under plan for the month. In total, the revenues are about 3.3% above our plan, running about $29 million above plan. Expenditures just under 3% below plan, and are about $26 million under plan. Those two work together to increase our cash balance about $55 million more than what we had anticipated in the plan, ending the year with $191 million versus a plan of $135. When we look at revenue, broken down in the 3 largest categories here, property taxes, well, no activity for this month. They did end the year at about 4% above plan, $19 million favorable. State monies very close to plan at 1%, representing about a $3 million favorable variance. And in the report, I've broken down what the contributors are to that. We've had a couple of items that weren't originally identified in the original plan, and we'll be refining that as we move forward. Let me pause for a moment. I should have started by saying that this report comes to you a meeting early. Finance Committee has not seen this yet, and that has to do with my personal schedule, and I advanced the report so you could see it because I will not be here for the second meeting of the month. But we'll do this report and review at the Finance Committee meeting next Wednesday, which has been moved from Thursdays to Wednesdays, and we may talk about that at the end of this report. So anyway, state revenue was very much on target for the year. Property tax allocation, another large item, but especially spot on about $40 million in revenue, we were within $66,000. So we were very good. We're very good at estimating and projecting that line item this time around. Other revenues, which include things like Medicaid reimbursement and win-win payments and interest income, many of these items can vary over time, and so you don't want to be too aggressive with a positive and very favorable estimate for that. But this line ended up about $7 million over plan for the year. Other than that, nothing terribly noteworthy in the revenue side, but again, ending the year at about $29 million above plan. When we get to expenditures, our largest line item being personnel related, that ended the year almost $11 million under plan. The plan had called for about $591 million in expenditures here. We had appropriated just under $587 million, and then the actual expenditures came in at $580. So I think that 2% variance is in a very close range to where we'd like to be. We don't want to be under, certainly on this line, but it does represent a sizable dollar amount at $10.8 million. We look at charter schools too and call that out, another large item, both dollar-wise and percentage in our overall expenditures. And as we mentioned before, with some of the changes that went on, especially with the end of one particular school, charter school, we had some favorable variances there of about coming in at about $5.2 million under plan for the year. Again, these are charges that are very much out of our control, and so you want to make sure that there's ample appropriated and that you do plan for it accordingly. So while we might want to hone in on that a little bit more, we do have to be careful with that line. I looked at all the other line items: purchase services without the charter school payments, purchase services, supplies, materials, and capital outlay. Collectively, they ran about $5.4 million under plan. And since we've been talking about this so much, we've done a pretty in-depth historical analysis of spend versus plan, and we're going to present some information to the Finance Committee and suggest that perhaps when we do the plan, and in fact the way I've prepared the plan for next year is to take into account at least a portion of this underspend, and in essence build in some favorable variances as we project forward. One of the next topics will be how much of this underspend do we carry forward into our planning for the 5-year forecast, which I'm putting together right now as we get prepared for the October forecast. Other objects that we have that are noteworthy really are pretty much at the end. The other objects has to do with transfers out and advances out. We're real good at predicting the first part of the year where we do a transfer over for debt service purposes and what we contribute to the athletic fund annually. At the end of the year when we're doing advances for cash flow purposes to other funds, that's a little bit more difficult to predict. That came in at about $6.2 million in the month of June. Overall, this line accounted for about $4 million in a favorable variance. As you might recall, in some of the previous years, that line had been planned at much higher, about $20 million. We've cut it back to 10. Now, if we want to talk about maybe reducing our plan for that a bit, you'd be talking about maybe a couple of $1 million to get that variance down, and that we could roll that into the forecast as well. But this still is pretty close. In the report this month, you'll find that that historical analysis that I mentioned to you that compares the spend to revised budgets and original budgets over about a 5 or 6 year period to get an idea of what our trends are. And that'll be, I think, a hot topic for FAC as to how we better plan and refine our projections to keep these variances down and to get a better picture out into the future of where we're headed financially. Finance Committee, as I mentioned, will meet next Wednesday at 4 o'clock, I believe, here in the Assembly Room. And we've invited the 4 new members to attend. We adjusted our schedule to accommodate their schedules, so perhaps this will be the first meeting that they're there to participate in the committee. And I think other than that, I'll address any questions you have. as I said, we'll be talking about the spending plan, the month-to-month spending plan. I'm working on the forecast. I should have that done here fairly shortly, but then that will be a topic for September's FAC, and then final board approval in October.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Are there any questions from my colleagues? Mr. Peretti?
I just wanted to say thank you for getting this out to us. I know we did have to do it early this month, and I just want to apologize. I've been under the weather, so I've been in and out of the chair because I don't want to make people sick before the first day of school. So just wanted to not just try to play hooky, but I am really looking forward to this year. We've got a lot of budgeting that's come a long way. Personnel budgets, the next thing we'll be tackling, non-personnel or capital budgets, and fantastic staff and community being part of it. It's been really amazing. So thank you very much for the opportunity to continue to serve in this capacity.
Thank you, Mr. Peretti. Hope you feel better. Mr. Vice President, I think you were next.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you so much. Thank you again, Mr. Treasurer Cork, and also to the staff who've done obviously an outstanding job in keeping us under expenditure. I was very pleased to see what I saw with year-to-date plan and year-to-date actual. Impressive, thank you for that. With that though, particularly on the revenue side, I saw that there was the other revenues year-to-date. What particular variables accounted for that high amount of revenue that we brought in? And can these, or are these possible assumptions for the next 5-year forecast?
The major contributors are pilots, payments in lieu of taxes, that you'll see a list of those types of settlements on the agenda tonight. So we have to predict those, and that's pretty much based on historical issues. And the other large contributor is interest income, which is a function of cash balance and interest rates. So yes, you can take a look at those two items and say, well, if the trend is that we're significantly, say, several million in each category over plan, should we count on more of that into the forecast? And that'll be a subject for that discussion. I would say there is room to move those estimates up, but we always have to be cautious and judicious so that we don't, we talk about being conservative in our forecasting, and so we anticipate that we'll have favorable variances in both directions, revenues being above estimates, expenditures being below estimates. But then we have to look at it, as we do at least twice a year, and say, how are we doing, and are those variances larger than we would like to see, and should we change our assumptions? On the revenue side, it's just that. Are there something about our assumptions that just are inherently too low? Are there issues like, if you look at property taxes, we're not going to adjust that until I see what the August settlement is like, because we had that change in federal tax code, and the conversations I've had with my colleagues is they've all called around and said, did you get a lot more in the March settlement than you were expecting? And so it isn't that there were more taxes levied, it was just that there was, we believe, a disproportionate payment of a full year's worth of taxes back in December of 17, so you could take the tax advantage. So we have to watch that. But absent those kinds of anomalies, you do look at this and say, hey, property tax settlements, if those are out there and we continue to have them at a fairly regular pace, why don't we bump that estimate by a couple of million? And so over a 5-year forecast, that can improve the picture. On the expenditure side, I would have to say that my biggest concern is in the non-personal area. And while, you could feel good that we're under plan, the first question I want to make sure that we get answered is, are we doing what we planned to do, but we did it more efficiently and more effectively, or did we not do something that we had planned to do? So that's there's multiple pieces to the why did we underspend issue.
Behavioral.
Yes, and so that's what we want to look into, and Budget Director Gooding is got his pedal to the metal on that one in pushing our budget directors for those kinds of detailed explanations. And we are not so much worried about the month-to-month variances because we don't ask our budget managers to plan out month-to-month. Quite frankly, that doesn't make a lot of, that catch is not worth the chase. But on an annual basis, it is. So we are looking at that to see, is there a behavioral factor in there that we need to take into account?
Thank you very much for that.
Sure.
Other questions or comments for the treasurer on his report? Thank you, Mr. Treasurer.
And I did note that Board Member Hudson
Please
joined
note
us.
the arrival of Board Member Hudson.
We wrote that down.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, let's move on then to item number 7. So this is a first reading of policy updates. I'm going to ask Policy Review Committee Chairman Brown to present the first reading.
We've got a number of updates and amendments to present for first reading this evening. I know the board has had an opportunity to take a look at all of those for, I think it's more than a week. And I've not heard from anybody. You've also got a synopsis, a summary of all of those, which is very helpful. What you'll see there is that nearly all of these are to comply with changes in the law, whether those are federal or state, or even regulations in the Department of Education. I don't know that there's any of them that specifically need to be called out, but I'm happy to answer any questions of anybody. I'll note that policy number 8300, continuity of organizational operations plans, is both very important that we have, and I understand that it was put to use today. We had some computer glitches and it was put to use. So you know, yes, it's good that we have it. The other one that I'd note is the last of these, regulation of speech off school premises. As you all know, this grows out of an issue that occurred at Hubbard Mastery, and the policy really doesn't say anything much more than the law requires. Yes, we have a First Amendment. Yes, we do respect and honor the free speech requirements of that amendment. And here's how we do that with respect to speech that occurs off school grounds. We also in the policy refer to student speech at school, and there's another policy that deals with that. I think we've got a very good formulation there. Not aware of anybody that has really done anything with it. But I think that will solve the issue because we agreed to do such policy. Does anybody have any questions about any of these? Yeah.
Yes, Board Member Hudson.
Brown, I do have, on 8300, and I apologize, I didn't have a chance to comment before the meeting. I'm just wondering if there is a subsequent policy about this. That policy mentions review and training, but I think there have to be, I think for effective COOP, there has to be not only training, but simulation. Is there a subsequent, I mean, I don't know if there's if 8301 or something like that goes, but if not, I would suggest we add that so that there is at least tabletop exercises or simulation of situations. And I know that we do, I understand we do that as part of training, but like to clarify that, I think would be kind of the best practice of that nature.
I think that's a good idea, and we can do that tonight. And simply, I would suggest in that last sentence of the policy, the superintendent shall conduct training for designated staff. Simply say training, including simulations.
Yes, yes. Thank you. And I think if I can, I like that because then it does still leave within the superintendent's discretion when it isn't, and we don't need to dictate that, but.
Right.
So, you started speaking, Board Member Hudson, but the beginning of your comments, I can hear them in the microphone. So are you offering that in this policy, we make it prescriptive that a simulation is a part of the training that is provided? And is that within our policy bounds, or is that a preference bound? I guess that's my question, because we set the policy, but we leave it to the administration on how they enact it or how they carry out those duties. We just set the parameters, and I understand a simulation. I mean, we want them to have a simulation, but my question is, within the realms of policy, is that prescriptive or should we just say training and they do training, or are you saying as a policy, a simulation must occur? And I guess it's a question for all of us, is that directing the work of the administration as opposed to guiding the work? Because we're to guide.
I think the suggestion that Board Member Brown had would be guidance, but it's guidance so that we're going beyond training. And that guidance is train and verify. And I don't think that that's overly prescriptive, because there's a big difference between the two. And you know, today, especially on, you know, IT security policies, you know, if an enterprise is not doing at least tabletop exercises regularly, let alone simulated responses, but it's also for disaster recovery, it's other things. We're not saying how frequently, we're not saying when, that would still be within the discretion of the administration, but that they should do that, period. That should be done.
I understand that. I guess I just want to set precedents of our reach and when we reach. Because
If we're saying do training, we should also say, test it.
Could we get there if we said you must have a plan that's approved by the board, and if that plan comes back and does not have simulation in it, then it's something that we wouldn't approve, or we could just simply add it? I guess.
So what I would say is, and we can refer this back to the committee, this is only a first reading, so we're not voting on these this evening. I interpret what Ms. Hudson is saying is that we just simply want to provide some guidance, that we want to see some tabletop or other, as well as simulation, but we leave the how to the administration. And so I think that that's within our purview, and I think that adding that to the COOP policy makes a lot of sense. How they do it, when they do it, that's up to the administration. It makes sense to me. Mr. Chairman, does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Colleagues, any other questions?
You taking notes to take back for second reading?
Of course.
Of course. Mr. Vice President, on this particular item?
Yep, thank you, Mr. President. Just very quickly, I think it's actually a good deal. And I say that because what it does is it helps us mitigate risk, it helps us evaluate risk. So this is a risk management piece, number one. Number two, I think it's a great evaluative piece for a leader. This is something that we definitely want to see in any of our leadership in terms of direct reports. So I think that this prescriptive measure makes a great deal of sense when you're talking about it from risk management and from a leadership perspective on being able to weigh the pros and cons of what that simulation might have delivered in terms of data. And then we can make more measured decisions. So I actually like it. Great idea.
And no objection from the administration?
Mr. President, boards are authorized and have that responsibility to establish those types of expectations of the administration. And as Ms. Hudson has already stated, simulations and tabletop exercises are already best practices in this type of work. I think having this in the policy just ensures that whoever sits in this seat is going to carry out that best practice. And that's an expectation of the board, that type of best practice be carried out in this type of exercise.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Very good discussion. So we'll see that when we come to the next meeting, we'll see that update to that particular policy.
Hate to even partially open another door, but just to note, the other new policy that I just spoke about, the speech policy, also provides that the superintendent shall develop training for relevant staff. So, it's a prevalent phrase throughout the policy book.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments colleagues, on this first reading? Okay. so
Thank
this-
you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, that constitutes the first reading.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
we do have at least a half a dozen other policies that are ready, but the most recent meeting of the committee, we didn't get to a quorum.
Right.
And as a result, we'll be taking those up at the next meeting and probably have them for the board at our next meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Ms. Gibbs?
Yes. I'd also like to just bring up the point to Board Member Brown and to the PRC. There's two policy issues that we wanted to address. One was developing an equity policy for the district, and that's been on the agenda for a few months, and so looking forward to working with you and the PRC committee on that. And in light of of recent developments, I don't know if it's on your calendar, but looking at our policies, and I know the administration is looking into what we have on our policies concerning domestic violence allegations, specifically as it pertains to spouses and other people. And I know that's in the news now, but as we're looking at it on TV, making sure that our policies are reviewed and that we're pulling together the best body of work and review so that we are very clear and our staff, as you say, are trained on the correct protocols and administrative procedures. So I offer that, both of those to the committee.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
The committee did, several meetings ago, begin conversation about an equity policy. We have a few, but there are very, very few equity policies out there. And this is going to be a longer process. This is a process that we've decided we need to hear from a variety of people, including you, and we'll be inviting you to tell us, your interest and ideas for that. But there are both pros and cons we're already discovering as we go through and whether to have such a policy. So it's a very interesting discussion and conversation. I'm pleased that we have an outstanding committee for that discussion. So we'll work through it. As to domestic violence, I saw your initial thoughts, and it's one I've been giving some thought to, but we've not met since that time. We'll be getting to consideration of that idea.
Thank you.
If there's no other discussion on the first reading of the policy updates, we'll move on then, and the chair will entertain a motion that we adopt the consent agenda as presented. Moved and seconded. Mr. Ready and Mr. Cole. Yes, Mr. Brown.
A couple of things with this. First, I think that I copied everybody concerning a likely typo in the BWP item, and I've not heard back from anyone yet. I did not have an opportunity to follow up. I was surprised not to hear back, but it's one that we can perhaps hold till the next meeting. This, I believe, should be 17, not referring to itself 18. It's just that simple.
Okay.
Is it supposed to be 17?
Doesn't,
Is that a motion then that we table that particular item? Item 10.4?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion before us to table item 10.4 pending further review. And is there a second?
What's the matter with the typo?
Mr. Brown, please enlighten those who may not be aware of it.
Yeah, this is pretty simple and minor unless these paragraphs become activated. The Paragraph 18 has in it a reference that the consultants will agree to save, indemnify, and hold harmless the board for any violation of paragraph 18 above. Well, this is paragraph 18, I believe, and it's logical to look to paragraph 17 as what that should refer to. Again, minor typo, but now's the time to fix it rather than down the road.
Okay. Colleagues, thoughts? We have a motion. Is there a second to table 10.4 pending review?
One real quick discussion, though.
Yes, sir.
If we are referring to the paragraph above, why don't we just amend it and change it and move forward? Mr. Treasurer Bihorek, you seem like you have something to say.
Mr. Treasurer.
Well, you have a signed agreement before you. That's what we gave you. So it's been signed by both parties. So if there's an issue with the language, I want to stay in my lane, but I'm going to suggest that you're going to have to take this back and get that re-signed. Unless legal tells me that it's so minor that all parties would agree to it, that, is this one of those typographical things that you have permission to change? We're going to have to redo the document no matter what.
Mr. Brown?
Within my inquiry to our lawyers at Taft, I did raise the possibility that maybe this was their intent, and I've not heard back. So I believe that it should refer to 17, but I'm not confident enough that we should just make that change here now on our own. And it's simple, and I don't think that this is going to amount to much, and I think we'll probably have it back here at the next meeting for approval.
Okay, so we have a motion to table, and if there's a second, then we'll vote whether or not we should table it.
Real quick, though,
Yes,
I mean,
Mr. Brennan?
in the future, this is, important that the board table is for board business. So when board members have questions and stuff like that, I hope we get, the system down so these things get responded to, because this is just kind of silly that this is being held up, slightly annoying, and maybe it's my cold, but I hope in the future that this does not happen again, because it's just, I don't know.
Mr. Preddy, is that a second?
It's not a second.
Okay. If there's not a second, then the motion to table will die. Okay.
I'm not sure where that leaves us, but okay.
There's not a second. So, thank you. We'll follow up anyway. We will follow up with BWP, and we will probably likely be back before the board again to approve an updated agreement potentially. All right. Other items? Yes, Ms. Gibbs.
Did we hear from legal?
General
I would like
Counsel?
to hear from
General Counsel?
On this matter, you're being advised by the Taft firm, and I think it would be wise to seek advice on this from that firm.
Agreed. Further discussion on the consent agenda? Any other items that anyone would like to discuss? Yes, Mr. Brown?
Only one other, and that is to 10.1. Another request for travel, board travel. I understand the importance of the Council of Great City Schools for a trip to Baltimore for 3-4 days, I think. But I would be willing to support one member going, but not 3. That's an additional $5,700 to have 3 rather than 1 board member attend.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any other thoughts, questions, or comments on any other piece of legislation contained within the consent? Ms. Hudson?
The section 11, would that
Yes,
be
ma'am.
included in there? This is the annual legislation we do for renewing the WCBE's NPR and American Public Radio and PRI memberships. I don't have any objection to that. But I think I've raised before the issue of what's next with WCBE? And I am, as we continue to look at Operation Fix-It and, capital needs for our buildings, et cetera, I really don't see that there's a way that we're going to have the resources we need for WCBA's next generation, and I would hate to let it go too much longer. And so I would ask the board, perhaps we form a working group or something to explore next steps. We've had community members put proposals forward. We've kind of touched on it in budget meetings, but and I would certainly be willing to work on that. But I think this has been a district tradition, a district service to the community for a very long time, and I think we should do all we can to preserve that legacy and ensure its future.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. I agree. I think it's time to have a broader discussion about WCBE's future. What I'd like to do is have a conversation with the administration about this and perhaps give some thought to creating an ad hoc committee that might dive deeper into this particular subject. So why don't we plan to have some more discussion about that? But I agree. I think it's time to have that discussion. I appreciate you bringing it to the table. Colleagues, any other questions, comments? All right, hearing none. Mr. Treasurer, I'm going to ask for you to call the roll on the consent agenda.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, except as to 10.1 and 10.4.
On which you vote no or abstain?
I'm sorry. No, as to those two. I apologize.
It's okay. Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Let's move on then to announcements. I'd like to provide the superintendent with the opportunity to speak about administrators.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for this opportunity to introduce some of the administrative appointments and promotions and administrative changes due to one very, very important resignation with our Human Resources Office that we want to share with you this evening. And so with the administrative appointments, we have Carlita Bell, who will be the new assistant principal at Johnson Park Middle School. Roshonda Elder, who will be the new assistant principal at Mifflin Middle School. Sethan Frazier, who will be the new assistant principal at Columbus Iota. Wendy Giddens, who will be the new high school assistant principal at Northland. And Dawn Horn, who will be the assistant principal at Whetstone High School. Those are the administrative appointments. For the administrative promotions, we have Vera Babs, who will be the Duxbury Park Elementary School principal. Sheila Evans, who will be the middle school principal at Sherwood Middle School. And Samuel Johnson, who will be the interim high school principal at Beechcroft High School. And Cherie Wells, who will be the executive director for school leadership development for the high school division. These are the administrative appointments. And lastly, Barbara McGrath, who has been our stellar senior executive director for human resources, has decided to resign. Yes, to transition, and but she has agreed to work with us to finish up the work of the human resources transformation that we've undertaken. And so we will still be able to take advantage of her expertise, but with her stepping down, and you have just approved that Julie Pfeiffer who has been our Director of Employee Relations, will serve as our interim Senior Executive Director for Human Resources. Julie? Yeah? And Diane McClin, who has been one of our hearing officers, has agreed to be our interim Director for Employee Relations. Mr. President, members of the board, that concludes the administrative changes that were just approved by you in the agenda for those that are here this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Welcome back, or congratulations. All right, let's then see if there are any other points of pride or announcements from other members of the board, colleagues. Mr. Brown, you look like you might have something to say. No? All right.
Just very quickly for me, I had a wonderful time at NBC4, making sure that our youngsters had the backpacks stuffed, and we made boxes. Treasurer Behorick and I dug in and made boxes, carried things. Dr. Stanford was outstanding. President Baker also attended. It was a wonderful event and opportunity to share with the community. I want to thank our students from Dublin, students from Worthington Kilbourne, students from Southwestern, I believe. There were so many different community partners that had hands-on involvement with making sure that those backpacks were made and packed. They put together an outstanding chain of command and chain, workflow process. It was just something very honorable to be at, and to see so many folks from not just Columbus, but outside of Columbus, working on behalf of our youngsters. So I just wanted to again send an incredible thank you to NBC4 and all of those who gave backpacks. Primary One, Charlita Tavares and her staff were there working. I just want to thank everybody that showed up and committed to this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Superintendent?
Mr. President, if I can also join in Mr. Cole's recognition. We had several building principals, several teachers, and several classified staff members who also spent considerable time there on Saturday as well. So it really was a community effort all across our community, but all across this region. As Mr. Cole said, we had the entire volleyball team from Dublin Jerome High School there for most of that morning, helping with our cause to provide these backpacks. So it was really a great effort.
It was amazing. And we also, Board Member Hudson?
I just had a question. Dr. Stanford, do we still need backpacks or need supplies? And if so, where can folks deliver that?
Mr. Baker to Ms. Hudson, we absolutely still need donations. We're getting closer to that goal, but the work is not done yet. And so we're continuing to work. One opportunity is tomorrow at the zoo, Columbus Zoo. We're going to be collecting backpacks there, and families who choose to go to the zoo and have a backpack and supplies, they will get a discount on their admissions into the zoo. During the rest of the time between now and the start of school, they can deliver their donations here at CEC, but they can also drop off the donations at the NBC4 headquarters on Olentangy River Road. And so there are several locations that they can drop off any donations that they have.
Awesome. Ms. Gibbs?
2 points of pride. People may not know, but I believe Woodcrest is back at school, right? So while we're waiting for everyone to get started on August 23rd, we do have students that are already started at our only year-round school. And so we are excited for them and all of their work. So I'm excited about that. My point of pride was at the Ohio School Board Association meeting this past Saturday. We had the opportunity to have State Superintendent Dr. Paulo Diamara, and in his remarks to the entire Board of Trustees comprised of board members from across the state, he specifically called out Columbus Downtown High School and all of the great work that he during his visit, that he saw during his visit, and that he thought it was absolutely incredible. And so I'm very excited that it is top of mind, because he wasn't speaking from notes. I mean, he was naming, Columbus City Schools Limited about the great things that we're doing, and to have our state superintendent speak so highly of our work, I thought was incredible. So to everyone, of course, to Ms. Watson and the entire team, they really made an impression on him and the work that they've done. So I think that's incredible. The next one is, we have a graduation coming up. And so for those students who are, who persevered, who did not give up, who just stayed at the helm, who worked very hard, we have summer graduation on, I believe, is it Saturday, August 18th? And it will be held at Columbus East High School. And we want to say an early congratulations to all of those families. And there are families this year that, of course, students who needed to make up their coursework, but if I'm correct, a lot of our students receive track scholarships for track and field, and a lot of times that tournament is held during graduation. So they do not get to participate in their high school graduation. And thanks to the leadership of Dr. Stanford, this year, if you missed your high school graduation because of the state track meet, they'll get to put on their cap and gown, and their families can come out and watch them walk across stage. You waited 13 years for it, and so every child deserves to have that opportunity. So that is my pending point of pride, to watch all of our students graduate. President Baker, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Any other? I'll just, Director Johnson?
Thank you. President Baker, members of the board, I would be remiss if I did not mention that Columbus City Council legislated funding to serve more than 900 children in pre-K education for the 18-19 school year, and more than 500 of those students will be in Columbus City Schools preschool programs.
Thank you, Director. That was worth waiting for. Thank you, Director Johnson, very much. Yes, Ms. Gibbs.
One more. If Dr. Stanford or Ms. Gillison can speak to the community meetings that we're having this week for students that are looking to complete their credits for college credit, for college and career readiness. I just had a call from a parent today about being prepared. And parents, right now, if you don't know how many credits your student has, you have a lot of work between now and September 30th. Do not wait until April, May, or June to figure out whether or not your child is going to graduate. Now is the time that your child is in 10th and 11th and the beginning of 12th grade to get a good, accurate count on how many credits they have and if they are on track for on-time graduation. But Dr. Stanford and Ms. Gillison, if you can speak to that, those meetings that I think are coming up.
Thank you, President Baker. To add to what Board Member Gibbs shared, this week we are hosting meetings, and they're parent informational meetings referencing graduation requirements. Over the past 3 years, our graduation requirements have changed time and time and time again. So there were letters that were sent out to those students who would be cohort 2019, those students that are rising seniors. And the first meeting was actually Saturday while you guys were loading up backpacks. We were informing families, and Pegeen and Cherie and Ed, they have done a fantastic job. But the dates of these meetings, so get your pens out. August 7th at Northland High School, that's tonight, and they were 6:30 to 7:30. Tomorrow at South High School, 6:30 to 7:30. On the 9th, we will be at Briggs from 6:30 to 7:30. And then on August 14th at Walnut Ridge. So what we tried to do was hit every region, and there is very, very important information. Graduation requirements for this cohort are different from graduation requirements for our kids that just graduated in June of 2018.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Superintendent.
Our chief academic officer says all the time that teamwork makes the dream work. And I know I'm going to probably embarrass him a little bit, but he's always the type of person that stands at the back of the room and is always, in the background doing a lot of the work and making sure that things happen. And so I'd just like to recognize our communications director, Scott Varner, for his leadership with the Stuff the Backpack initiative. I mean, he has done some tremendous work. He has done some tremendous work on a historic effort that we have, and as you know, when it comes to all of the different events, like the African American Male Walk that's coming up, he's making sure that we've got everything we need to represent the district and to do it well. So I just wanted to recognize all the work that he's done.
Viner, thank you for all you do. And just two more quick things. Points of pride for me, the Central Enrollment Center ribbon cutting was amazing. If you haven't been to the Central Enrollment Center, you've got to get over there. You won't recognize it. I don't even think there was a bathroom in that building the first time I went to visit, but it was awesome. Also, I had the honor to speak at the new teachers training on the first day, and I don't think anybody dropped out right after I spoke, so I think I did okay, but it's just amazing to see all of those new teachers and just how excited they are for the school year to start. So I was very proud to be able to do that. Anything else for the good of the order this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn, and there is a second, Mr. Treasurer. You may call the roll when you are.
Was that Ms. Reyes? Did you second that?
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti? Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown? Motion to adjourn passed.
Thank you. We stand adjourned. Thank you. Have a good evening.